Avengers Endgame may be the culmination of the MCU so far, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of upcoming superhero movies on the way. Here's the complete lineup of upcoming superhero movies from Marvel and DC Comics in no particular order. X-Men Dark Phoenix. The long-awaited sequel to X-Men Apocalypse will not only be Fox's last X-Men film, but it will also be the first X-Men film without a Wolverine appearance. An X-Men movie without Wolverine is something the franchise has refused to entertain in the past. Spider-Man Far From Home. The movie follows Peter Parker as he travels abroad on a school trip. While in Europe, Nick Fury recruits Spider-Man to team up with Mysterio, a superhero from another dimension, to fight a group of elementals. Since the movie will mark the final film for Phase 3, it's expected that Phase 4 announcements will begin in the months following Far From Home's theatrical release. The Eternals. The Eternals is expected to be the fellow MCU installment alongside Black Widow, set for a 2020 release. The film was first announced by Kevin Feige back in 2018. Since then, Angelina Jolie has been reportedly negotiating for one of the lead roles. The film is expected to focus on Cersei and Icarus, two members of the Eternal species that were created by the Celestials. Eternals have already been introduced to the MCU through the presence of Thanos. The New Mutants. Joining the cinematic ranks of young superheroes is the New Mutants, adapted from the comic series of the same name. Locked away in a secret facility, but desperate to fight their way to freedom, the New Mutants also walks a fine line between sci-fi and horror. It was originally meant to release in April 2018, but was pushed back at the last minute by more than 2 years to allow for reshoots. Morbius. After playing the Joker in Suicide Squad, Jared Leto is returning to the world of comic books in a role that should offer him a bit more screen time. Sony's Morbius the Living Vampire movie has already begun filming and will release in July 2020. Leto plays Michael Morbius, a doctor who tries to cure himself of a rare blood disease, but instead imbues himself with vampire-like traits, including a lust for human blood. Joker. Joker is technically not part of the DCEU, but is instead a standalone movie set in the 1980s, with Joaquin Phoenix playing the Clown Prince of Crime. Executive produced by Martin Scorsese and inspired by Scorsese's 1982 satirical film, The King of Comedy, Joker will serve as an imagined origin story for Batman's greatest nemesis. Though Bruce Wayne himself is just a child, set photos and behind-the-scenes images from Phillips have shown Phoenix wearing a red suit, green hair, and traditional clown makeup, and seemingly inciting riots in Gotham City. Birds of Prey. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn will return in Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, a team superhero movie with a very long title, directed by Kathy Yan. Birds of Prey will also star Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Huntress, Rosie Perez as Detective Renee Montoya, and Janae Smollett-Bell as Black Canary. Ella J. Basco will play the young Cassandra Cain, and Ewan McGregor will play the movie's villain, Black Mask. Black Widow. Considering Natasha Romanoff sacrificed herself in Endgame, Black Widow is all but guaranteed to be a prequel. It will likely focus on Natasha's life prior to becoming a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Based on the events from Endgame, some believe that Nat's father will be involved in the film's storyline. Scarlett Johansson will be reprising her role as Black Widow. The Black Widow solo movie also marks the first MCU installment to be solely directed by a woman, with Kate Shortland taking the reins. It seems probable that the movie will take on one of the 2020 release dates, Wonder Woman 1984. After first appearing in Batman vs. Superman, Gal Gadot reprised her role as Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman, in Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman film in 2017, which became an astounding critical and commercial success. So of course, Warner Brothers decided to fast-track a sequel. Wonder Woman 1984 takes place in the 1980s during the final days of the Cold War, with Kristen Wiig playing the film's villain, Dr. Barbara Minerva, aka Cheetah. Deadpool 3. The third installment of the Deadpool franchise is already in pre-production, but the Disney-Fox merger had sparked much debate about our beloved regenerating degenerate. Since Disney strives to uphold a squeaky clean image across all of their brands, including Marvel, fanboys and fangirls alike are worried that Disney might wash the Merc's mouth out with soap. But on a call with investors, Disney Chairman CEO Bob Iger said that Disney will continue to make R-rated Deadpool movies after it absorbs much of Fox. So get ready for a few F-bombs dropped around the Magic Kingdom. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The future of the Guardians of the Galaxy series was up in the air after the firing of James Gunn. Shortly thereafter, Gunn took over as the writer and director for DC Films' The Suicide Squad. Disney later reinstated Gunn to develop Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Although its development has been delayed, the sequel will reportedly start production as early as 2020. The fast track could result in the sequel releasing ahead of some of the other confirmed MCU movies. Not much is known about the plot, but it's assumed that it will follow the Guardians in their quest to find Gamora. It also seems very likely that Thor will be along for the journey based on how Endgame ended. Venom 2. Though many doubted it and reviewers panned it, the Tom Hardy-led Venom proved to be an unstoppable juggernaut, grossing $855 million at the worldwide box office and more than securing a sequel. The movie doesn't have an official release date yet, but it seems likely that Venom 2 is the sequel movie that Sony has pinned in a release date for in October 2020. Doctor Strange 2. Since Stephen Strange's introduction into the MCU, his character has appeared in Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame. Strange had a heavy hand in figuring out how Thanos' plan would play out. Strange proved to the Ancient One that he was on the path to become the smartest Sorcerer Supreme. It's possible that Doctor Strange 2 would focus on the character unlocking his full potential. Benedict Cumberbatch and Benedict Wong are expected to reprise their roles for the sequel. Fantastic Four reboot. The Fantastic Four have always seemed uniquely suited to the lighter tone and quippy dialogue of the MCU. Like the X-Men, the earliest we're likely to see an actual Fantastic Four movie is summer of 2022. And it's more likely that this won't happen until 2023 or beyond. Just expect Marvel to be a little less cautious and shy about the return of their first family. This doesn't mean that we won't see the characters and concepts from both the Fantastic Four and X-Men start quietly making their way into the MCU. Just because Avengers Endgame didn't have a post-credit scene doesn't mean that the tradition won't return immediately with the next MCU movie. The Batman. It has been a long road for Warner Brothers and DC Films to get another standalone Batman movie off the ground. Originally slated to have Ben Affleck star, write, and direct, he has since left the role and DC behind altogether. The reins of the hopeful franchise now rest in the hands of War for the Planet of the Apes director Matt Reeves, who is in the process of casting the next big screen Batman, with recent reports pointing to Robert Pattinson being the top choice. The possibility of Reeves nearing his selection for his version of Bruce Wayne is the latest positive sign of movement for the Batman, which is otherwise gearing up to start production later this year or early 2020. The Suicide Squad. David Ayer's Suicide Squad was the first movie that truly expanded the DCEU beyond the core heroes, but it wasn't the critical success that Warner Brothers or audiences expected it would be based on its impressive marketing campaign. Still, the film was an enormous commercial success, so the studio is planning on releasing a sequel, Suicide Squad 2. After Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn was fired by Marvel Studios, Warner Brothers wasted little time in recruiting him to write and direct Suicide Squad 2. In addition to bringing his Guardians of the Galaxy thought process to Suicide Squad 2, the sequel is currently titled The Suicide Squad, and it will feature an all-new cast. While it's possible Margot Robbie will reprise her role as Harley Quinn in The Suicide Squad, it was recently confirmed that Will Smith won't be appearing as Deadshot due to a scheduling conflict. The Suicide Squad is aiming to begin production in September of 2019. Black Panther 2. Following Black Panther, the character of T'Challa was involved in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. Now that Thanos' snap has been reversed, T'Challa is expected to become an integral part of the MCU's future. Endgame even suggests that Namor could be a central point of Black Panther 2. Ryan Coogler is currently developing a sequel in which he will write and direct. The Flash. Warner Brothers announced at San Diego Comic-Con 2017 that the official title of the movie will be Flashpoint, presumably based on the comic book series of the same name. This convoluted storyline involves time travel and multiple versions of popular characters in the DC universe. While it remains to be seen how closely the movie hews to the comic book story, this title suggests that fans will see darker alternate versions of characters such as Batman and Wonder Woman. Due to various delays, the Flash movie is not expected to begin filming until late 2019 at the very earliest. Batgirl. A Batgirl movie wasn't on Warner Brothers' DCU slate until former Avengers director Joss Whedon talked to the studio about wanting to make that film. Whedon reportedly wanted to adapt the $1 million debut of Batgirl, but he simply couldn't make it work, so he exited the project as both writer and director in February of 2018, almost 1 year after signing on for the film. Warner Brothers is looking for a female director to replace Whedon. Christina Hodson, the screenwriter behind Birds of Prey, is also penning the script for Batgirl. Green Lantern Corps. This will be a reboot of the Warner Brothers franchise, so Ryan Reynolds is not expected to reprise this role. Plus, he's also busy being Deadpool for Fox. Green Lantern is rumored to make his first appearance at the end of Justice League Part 2, when he warns the team that Darkseid is on his way to bring destruction to Earth. But the title of the reboot tells us this will be a team-up film featuring 2 Green Lanterns. Tyrese Gibson has been openly campaigning for one of the roles, as the film will find Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart in a Lethal Weapon type situation. Justice League Dark. One of the strangest properties that Warner Brothers is trying to get off the ground is Justice League Dark, based on the comic book team of the same name that protects the world from magical and supernatural forces. Guillermo del Toro and Doug Liman were both previously attached to direct the film, which was once titled Dark Universe. Justice League Dark may not be getting the most attention at the moment, but it's something that Warner Brothers is actively trying to get made. Gotham City Sirens. The Hollywood Reporter cites a rumor saying Birds of Prey will kick off a 3-movie series, followed immediately by the long-rumored Gotham City Sirens film starring Harley Quinn, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy, and capped off by a 3rd movie which will pit the 2 teams against each other. Cyborg. There hasn't been any update on the planned Cyborg movie for a long while, and it turns out there's a good reason for that. A source claims that the Cyborg film is never going to happen at this point, as the studio has zero interest right now in continuing Victor Stone's story on the big screen. That includes featuring him in a supporting or cameo capacity in any other hero's movie. Though you have to feel for the actor, this does not fit for the wider scope of the DC franchise. Fisher was cast by director Zack Snyder for his unfolding master plan for this shared universe, but now that he's no longer the architect of the DCEU anymore, it stands to reason that there's no place for Cyborg on the upcoming slate. The heroes never had much of a standalone history in the comics anyway, and as Warner Brothers pursuing solo films with little to no crossovers, there's simply no role for Vic to fill in for the franchise. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2. Shortly before Into the Spider-Verse hit theaters, Sony Pictures confirmed plans to produce a sequel. While details are scarce, Into the Spider-Verse set up 2 sequels that allow for Miles Morales' story to branch off in multiple directions. And since the technology to make the movie has already been made, developing a sequel should be more straightforward than it was the first time around. At the moment, Sony Pictures Animation has 3 release dates carved out for 2020, but that doesn't mean Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2 will snag one of those dates. Regardless though, an Into the Spider-Verse sequel is very much in development.